the breath and love of our mother is present because of each and every person that is here. Today's preacher is our own Chastity Jones. She is a second-year MDiv student here at the School of Theology, and we are blessed by her creativity and passion for justice today and every day. Chastity, the Students of Color Association, and the Association of Black Seminarians have put together a wonderful service that Nora will now say a little more about.
Welcome. I want to give some context concerning this service to situate us for this unique experience. This will be a very different chapel service than we are used to. The service was developed through the lens of a womanist theology. Womanist theology is Christian liberation theology that centers the Black experience, particularly the Black woman's experience. Black women have historically nurtured their communities and been the backbone of every revolutionary movement in Black life. Womanist theology does not limit itself to biblical texts, but art, poetry, scholarship, as well as the Black experience itself as its own origin of theology. Thus, our Holy Writ are from two beloved Black scholars. Our speaker, as a womanist, unapologetically prioritizes our beloved Black community and feels the need to address an issue that impacts our community immensely: police brutality. Because much of Black life is unfortunately filled with violence, I want to give a trigger warning. The service will no doubt concern itself with state violence against Black bodies. The second lens applied when developing the service is the concept of social justice as a spiritual practice. If for your help you need to step out or have someone to help you process, there will be people available in the back for that. Thank you again for being here to lament and cry out for justice to the Most High.
Good morning. The song that I'm sharing with you today is called Sustaining Fire, and I wrote it during a time when I was facing depression, particularly the depression that comes from realizing the ideal that you're hoping for doesn't turn out to be the way you want it to be. And so, as you listen to these words, I don't know what you have to process through that song, but I hope you can either process something you're going through right now where your dreams of what you hope the world could be isn't turning out the way they are, or you could, lament with us and stand in solidarity.
Beauty of my soul, find rest in your console, and all I want to hold, be whole in letting go, saturate me, liberate me, overwhelm me with your sustaining fire, Lord. At times I'm caught up in my complicated stress. Can you teach Let your fire burn till I take my turn before your throne. Let there be no shiver in my spirit, no. There's still a flame in my bones. Let your fire burn till I take my turn before your throne. Yeah, yeah. Let there be no shiver in my spirit, no. There's still a flame in my bones. Saturate me, liberate me, overwhelm me with your sustaining fire, Lord. Saturate me, liberate me, overwhelm me with your sustaining fire, Lord.
A poem entitled Black Ink. Sometimes we treat dead bodies better than living ones. But it's not the same for me. Because my life has been filled with gunshots from people who are meant to protect me. And now that I'm laying on the cold, hard cement, the only acknowledgement I'll get is from the people who truly love me. Yeah, I'll show up in the news, but not how I would want it to be. Because I'm just a girl from the ghetto, and my worth is as much as that. My mama will scream out, "Why?" begging on her knees. And I realized then that my physical activity was running from people who tried to tear me down, thinking I was a thug. Not realizing I'm a girl filled with poetry that grazes my lips like a knife driving into me. Blooming like a corsage in my chest. The red spills with my black skin that isn't considered beautiful unless it's light skin, because then I have a part of me that's white as the moon, and I guess to you, I deserve to live a little more. But what you don't realize is that the moon wouldn't shine without the darkness. And I am that darkness. But now everything is dark. And the only thing that is white is the back of the newspaper where the black ink spills the little info of how I died, but it's brief because of the white person who shot me. To you, I'm just a little black girl who was probably doing drugs. But I'm more than my skin color. And I'm more than what you will ever be. Because I was a black girl who fell in love with poetry. And I will write why with my blood on the cold, hard concrete.
I now invite you to share the peace of Christ with your neighbor as you feel comfortable.
candles you received upon entering you will be using now. If you aren't planning to stay for the vigil at the end of the service, you can leave them in the back. Please rise if able. We will light the candle as a reminder of the light that the names that we will be reading were in this world. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes as I read the names. Some of these names you'll be familiar with, some not so familiar with. I'd like you to imagine the faces of the names that I read. Please charge any of the mispronunciations to my head and not my heart. Don Trey Hamilton, Eric Gardner, John Crawford III, Michael Brown, Ezell Ford, Laquan McDonald, Akai Gurley, Tamir Rice, Antonio Martin, Jareen Reed, Renisha McBride, Charlie Lindu Kingwani, Tony Robinson, Anthony Hill, Megan Hockaday, Eric Harris, Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, William Chapman, Jonathan Sanders, Sandra Bland, Samuel Du Bois, Jeremy McDowell, Corey Jones, Jamar Clark, the Charleston 9 at Emmanuel AME Church, Bruce Kelly Jr., Alton Sterling, Philando Keston, Joseph Mann, Abdirahman Abdi, Paul O'Neill, Corin Gaines, Seville Smith, Terrence Crutcher, Keith Lamont Scott, Alfred Alongo, Deborah Danner, Botham G., Tatiana Jefferson, Benny Branch, and those who have been murdered without our knowing.
Klux Klan violence in the same manner we did earlier, but there is state violence, police violence, military violence. And to a certain extent, the Ku Klux Klan still exists in the form of law enforcement. Now a reading from James Cone, incorporating the words of Harlem Renaissance poet Count Cone. To say that Christ was but the first lead in a line of trees on which a man would swing suggested that Christ, poetically and religiously, was symbolically the first lynching, the one who brought my redemption on a cross and shaped my profit by his loss. Lynched victims were transformed by this association of the cross as the lynching tree into martyrs. As Cullen wrote, the South is crucifying Christ again, and this time, he's dark of hue.
Good morning. I'm just going to jump right into it. Does blackness justify state-sanctioned murder? Is my question. Police brutality is not a new phenomenon. It is only just now being recorded and disseminated globally and virally because of smartphones and social media. In a just world, you would think that video evidence and billions of eyewitnesses of racist encounters between law enforcement and unarmed black individuals would guarantee a conviction. But apparently, we're not living in a just world. And freedom is a constant struggle. Angela Davis pays homage to the efforts and accomplishments of the civil rights movement. In my opinion, the most important accomplishment of the civil rights movement is that black people were given exactly what the movement says: civil rights. Not equal, civil. Black people were finally considered human beings, legally. I want to point out how recent this was. When my grandmothers were born, they were not considered human beings. This happened, being granted humanhood, happened in their lifetimes. The civil rights movement did not put an end to our country's racism problem. Having a black president did not put an end to our country's racism problems. Black people do not have equal rights. This is our reality. Angela Davis daringly goes as far to say, I say daringly because it's a risk for her as a black woman to say this, that the black community is still experiencing white Christian terrorism. No longer in the forms of the KKK, which still exists in my hometown, by the way, or other forms of obvious racism, but exists in the form of police brutality and mass incarceration. Mass incarceration is the privatized prisons that profit off of every black and brown body that they throw into prison. It is the bodies of black men that primarily fill up our country's prisons. But that's a whole nother sermon, so I'm not going to touch on that right now. But the black community is still under threat by white organizations and individuals who often call themselves Christian. There is no accountability, there is no justice for these crimes against the people who only have civil rights. There is no equality. The threats from the police in this generation are being equated to the threat of lynching in our grandmother's time, when they weren't considered human beings. James Cone daringly insists, I say daringly because it's a risk for him as a black man to say this. He says, to say that Christ was but the first lead in a line of trees on which a man would swing suggests that Christ, poetically and religiously, was symbolically the first lynchee. Cone is comparing the experience of Jesus and his experience on the cross to that of the Black experience in the form of lynching. He even more boldly claims that Christ was indeed Black by way of the Black experience. He drew a parallel between the embarrassment, the pain, and the violence of the cross and that of lynching, taking into account multiple aspects of pain: the psychological pain, the physical pain, the emotional pain, the pain so deep that it gets transmitted to the next generation. Today, I will daringly say, I say daringly because it's still a risk for me as a Black woman to say this, that modern day lynch victims look a lot like victims of police brutality. Cone continues to draw parallels between lynch victims and that of martyrs. They become symbols, they become reminders, they become very meaningful in the community. I believe that's why I have such a strong and overwhelming desire to say her name, Atiana Jefferson. I believe that's why I have a strong and overwhelming desire to say his name, Benny Branch. I believe that's why I have a strong and overwhelming desire to say all their names and insist that any community that I'm a part of acknowledge them. Because as Cone said in his interview about this book, The Cross and the Lynching Tree, the victims of lynchings live on in those who survive them. The victims of police brutality live on in us who survive them. How can I, as a Black woman, not be afraid in these times? I used to believe that respectability politics and dressing a certain way and wearing my hair a certain way and assimilating into white culture and making myself small in the presence of white people and prioritizing white people's feelings over mine, etc., would prevent violence in my life. None of these things can protect me from either an angry white person or the systematic racism. None of it. Once I realized that, I realized something else. That those victims could have easily been me, a relative, or a friend. My worst nightmare concerns the possibility that it could one day be my own child. Police brutality affects me. As a result, I am scared and I do not feel safe. Every second of every day, I am afraid. Because we used to believe that we would at least be safe in our own churches. No. We used to believe that we would be safe in our own homes. No. Atiana, who was shot right outside of her front door with her 8-year-old nephew inside, and Botham Jean, who was shot in his home when a white police officer responded to the wrong address, they're evidence that there is no true refuge in this time, in this country, in this era, where political rhetoric is filled with hate, white supremacy, patriarchy, xenophobia, and homophobia, now more than ever before in U.S. history. Before I move on, though, I have to question why most churches did not acknowledge the murder of Botham Jean. We didn't really notice because we've grown numb and we've fallen asleep. But the church had a lot to say when Botham's brother forgave Botham's murderer in court in the name of Jesus. The church was so proud. We are affected because we already carry the intergenerational trauma of lynchings in our bodies as we watch these videos and witness the stories of how Black people, people that look like us, who did not deserve to die, died like an animal but it's present tense because it's happening now. We're dying like animals in the streets. I have to be honest. This could be a very sensitive time for Black students, faculty, and staff in the wake of these traumatic events. And we rarely have time to recuperate or heal from one police shooting before another one happens. I see why we've grown numb to it, because it's been happening consistently for far too long. Compassion fatigue and coping mechanisms are huge parts of the human experience of caring deeply. That's why I want to make a statement today, this week, and for the rest of my life, if need be, so that we never forget. Because forgetting would be an injustice, and I refuse to let that happen. I already said that I'm afraid. I am. But I'm also angry. I'm so angry that I have to be afraid. I'm angry that I can't say exactly how I feel without risking my safety. I'm angry that police brutality is a systematic response to the abolition of slavery. I'm angry that there is no justice for the police officers that brutally murder and send to privatized prisons our fathers, brothers, uncles, and cousins from our communities, putting a backbone-breaking responsibility on the women in our communities. I am angry that there is no response from religious and educational institutions. Religious because this deserves a theological response if God has been portrayed as a God of justice all these years. Educational institutions because this is history, and it will be taught in educational institutions one day. I'm sometimes enraged that these issues seem to be buried right now, and that people outside of the U.S. think racism ended with the civil rights movement, because that is the image that our country portrays. That the United States is innocent and qualified to be a moral conscience in this world. I have been channeling my anger in very productive ways, so don't worry. Because of this, you will be seeing many events and opportunities to engage in this topic this coming year. So be on the lookout. The first of which is our candlelight vigil for Black Lives. Immediately following the service, it'll be about 15 minutes long. If you would like to attend, we ask that you please exit in the doors directly behind you. And if you're not attending, we ask that you exit on either sides of the building and returning your candles before exiting. This vigil is to honor and acknowledge Atiana Jefferson and Benny Branch, as well as stand in solidarity with the Black students, faculty, and staff. On November 13th, from 4 to 6 p.m. in School of Theology, room 325, there will be a community discussion called Police Brutality, It's Still Happening. The entire community is invited to join this conversation, and there will be dinner provided by the School of Theology, Students of Color, and the Interfaith Club. Angela Davis calls it the call to public conversations on race and racism. I'm looking forward to having these conversations and possibly have some of these conversations give birth to actions we can take. I'm talking about seeking justice and standing in solidarity with the descendants of those who were forced to be in this country. We are still here, and we are conjuring the revolution. Amen.
God is on our side. The following offering comes simply put from the rabbinic Jewish tradition. And this is what kept our fathers and our mothers and what keeps us surviving. For not only one arose and tried to destroy us, but the Holy Blessed One saves us from their hands. This is a song of lamentation, but also of gratitude to the Holy Blessed One. This is for the generations of victims of oppression in all the communities I belong with, whose pain is in my bones. For my people in Iran and the Middle East, who continue to suffer systematically under British and American imperialism, which feeds religious extremism and puts the beauty of Islam in dark, dark shadows. For my Jewish community and the Tree of Life and Or Simcha synagogue shooting victims, whose yahrzeit we observe at this time, and most recently the victims of the white supremacist attack on a synagogue in my home country, Germany. And for my community of followers of Jesus, who hurt with us when Jesus is instrumentalized for doing harm.
Please, as I read in Swahili, follow the English translation in your bulletin. Kuliko jana, Bwana ni mkozi wangu, tena ni kiongozi wangu. Ananipenda leo kuliko jana. Baraka zake hasikishwi, si kama binadamu habadiliki. Ananipenda leo kuliko jana. Kuliko jana, kuliko jana. Yesu unipende leo, kuliko jana. Kuliko jana, kuliko jana. Yesu unipende leo, kuliko jana. Sina kuomba Mungu wasame. Wanga lujua jinsi unayonipenda. Mimi wasamigalini sema. Na maadui wangu ninawaombea maisha marefu wazidi kuna ukinibariki. Ujue binadamu ni watu wa ajabu sana. Walimkana Yesu mara 3 kabla jua kuwika. Ujue binadamu ni watu wa ajabu sana. Walisulubisha Yesu Masia bila kusita. Kuliko jana, kuliko jana. Yesu unipende leo kuliko jana. Kuliko jana, kuliko jana. Yesu unipende leo kuliko jana. Wewe ndo nategemea. Kufa kuponea baba nikutejema. Chochote kitanikatisia kuingia mbinguni kutanodolea.
I would like to acknowledge that we are on stolen land. I would like to acknowledge that this pulpit is not accessible to all. I'm going to teach you a song that has no title because the way of knowing that I come from is not concerned with such things. My tradition in the Mexica tribe has such deep reverence for life, all life, Black lives. I stand here in solidarity with my Black brothers and sisters. I will teach you the words of the song, and then I will ask you to find someone unlike you in this room. The words of the song go like this. When I look into your eyes, it is only me I see. You are my reflection. There is only one. I will repeat them. Please follow along. When I look into your eyes, it is only me I see. You are my reflection. There is only one. Now we'll sing it together. When I look into your eyes, it is only me I see. You are my reflection. There is only one. When I look into your eyes, it is only me I see. You are my reflection. There is only one. Please find a person unlike yourself. Rise and speak.
You are like it. Yeah. No. Yeah. Thank you.
Have we found our strangers? Have we found our neighbors? I'm going to ask you to look into each other's eyes as we sing this song together and close this out. When I look into your eyes, it is only me I see. You are my reflection. There is only one. Please be seated.
close us out in prayer, I just want to remind you all that immediately following this service out front, there'll be a vigil, a candlelight vigil for Black Lives. We ask that if you would like to participate, to walk straight out these doors directly behind you. If not, feel free to exit on either sides of the building. And I think a few people should be passing out the liturgy for that on your way out. Don't forget your candle. Let us pray. Oh, Mother God, thank you for this time together to lament, to cry, to be angry, to be consoled by each other, by you. We cry out for justice, mercy, and strength to continue struggling for Black liberation, for all liberation. Amen.